With me now at Post 9 is Patient Capital founder and CIO Samantha McLemore. Welcome. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Scott.
How are you thinking about all of this? I mean, do you take pause when someone like Joe Tsai talks about a bubble? We've tried to call bubbles many times over the years. Hasn't always worked out.
You always have to think carefully about those things. So I think, one, what he said is it's the start of the beginning. So that sounds very early. I think the reporters covered it well, and they covered that there's a lot of concern here. So I think that's good for keeping the stock expectations contained and reasonable. And at the same time, it's the megatrend of the megatrend. So we have a huge technological revolution combined with, not modest, but not really flying away stock expectations. That makes us excited.
Sometimes when the calls appear to be early, we don't pay attention until it's too late. And I'm reminded of course, Alan Greenspan in 1996 talking about irrational exuberance in tech. And of course, it was 3.5 years later that we had the crash. That was obviously a moment in time, not suggesting that history is going to repeat itself, that it was going to perfectly rhyme with that period. But the broader point is that this can take a long time.
Yes.
To manifest itself, if it in fact is even a bubble.
Yes, usually the peak of bubbles is not characterized by massive concern and headlines every day on the news about bubble, bubble, bubble. So we may get there, and I wouldn't be surprised if we end there. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
And neither do the CEOs spending this amount of money.
Well, that's for sure, not yet. Speaking of, you own many of these stocks, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, NVIDIA. What do you make of the way they've traded lately?
Well, I think they had a huge move. They were the dominant performers last year. So I think having a correction is normal, natural. We thought coming into the year we might see a broadening out as the economy sort of improved. Now, we'll see if that happens depending on how the economy shakes out. But I think it's not surprising to see the stocks pull back given the moves that they've had. Correction
because of rotation? Or is the money just going to come right back in now that investors deem the multiples more palatable?
I would think that they would remain the leaders of this market. I think if something happens that changes that would not be as constructive to the market. But I think we've just had a normal, natural correction. I think the leadership will remain the leadership, although I do think we'll have a broadening out and many other stocks can do well like we saw late last year.
You do. So even with these concerns about the economy and tariff headlines and all of that, you think that the broadening can happen?
I do. I think we just had a normal, natural correction. I think they're healthy. They never feel that way. They happen for legitimate, risky reasons. The tariff and the trade wars, those are real risks. And I think, if we continue in the environment we have now, that wouldn't be good. But I think Donald Trump wants the markets to go up, and he'll, retrench. And we've already seen that. And I think the Fed, will be cutting if they need to be cutting.
Okay. Well, that raises a really interesting question, and I'm not sure there's a good answer to it yet. And I know it's being debated as to whether that so-called Trump put and even a Fed put exists at this point, or if both of those, as some would suggest, have both come at a lower price than originally thought.
Well, I think it's quite clear that the Trump put that everyone thought existed didn't exist at the level people thought it existed. So the market's been much weaker than people thought Trump would allow it to be. I still think, and you're starting to see comments out of his team, that they do care and they want a healthy market. And so they have backtracked on some of the tariffs. Now, we'll see what happens next week. But I think they are still sensitive to overall market conditions.
I don't get the sense that you're questioning the idea of a U.S. exceptionalism trade. The one we came into this year all bulled up on. And then because of the back and forth and the way that some of this tariff policy has been rolled out, it's caused way more volatility than people expected. I'm not sure people had a 10% pullback on the S&P on their bingo card on January 20th.
Well, they should have, because last year we didn't have a 10% pullback, and they're pretty common. The last one we had was 2023. So we came into the year saying, listen, we're likely to have one at some point this year. Who knows when that will be? I think the U.S. is in a great position, is still in a solid position. I think other global markets have done much worse, so it's not surprising to see them do better relatively. I think the U.S. can still do well, and particularly from this point, with the U.S. markets down and other markets up so much, I would be buyers of the U.S.